Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Governance Committee. Is my microphone working all right? Perfect. Right, we will crack on. Good evening and welcome to the Governance Committee today. My name is Wesley Roberts, Councillor for Buckshire and Worden. I'm the chair of the Governance Committee this evening. I'll start with a few housekeepings before we do introductions. So there's no planned fire alarm, so if fire alarm goes, please leave by the nearest exit. Let's try and keep our phones on silent. I've already put mine on. We're here in the Civic Centre. There are some members joining us on Teams, so thank you for those joining. Are people getting a bit of an echo of my voice, or is it okay? It's okay. All right, very good. We are live on YouTube, and the link can be found on the council website. If you are on Teams, if you could just stay on mute unless you want to participate, then just raise your hand virtually. And then that's it. We will go around this way, starting with on the left.
Good evening. My name is Tasneem Safdar. I'm the Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Good evening, my name's Louise Mattinson. I'm the Director of Finance and Section 151 Officer.
Good evening, Councillor Damien Bretherton, and I represent Walton Liddell West.
Good evening, Peter Gabbett, Councillor for Lost at Call.
Dawn Highton, Head of Audit and Risk.
Georgia Jones, Engagement Lead for the External Auditors for the Council.
Caroline Winstanley, Transformation and Change Manager.
Holly Walmsley, Head of People Policy and Partnerships.
Claire Beattie, Head of Digital Services.
Councillor Margaret Smith, New Longton and Hutton East.
Councillor Ange Turner, Broadoak Penwitham.
Claire Gornall, Democratic Services Officer.
Perfect. Thanks very much, everyone. So that takes us to agenda item 1, which is apologies. So I'll just pass over to Claire.
Thank you, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Deborah Ashton.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That takes us to agenda item 2, so declarations of interest. Does anybody on committee have anything to declare? I'll take that as a no. Perfect. That takes us to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting. So members are advised that the item can be found starting on page 3 in the main agenda pack. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes of 30th of July 2024? Okay. No comments. So anyone to propose? Thanks, Councillor Gabbert, and seconded by Councillor Smith. If we could just raise our hands if we are happy to approve them. Perfect, thank you. So they're approved and they'll be signed. That takes us to agenda item 4, which is the external audit progress update. Members are advised that this item can be found starting on page 9 of the main agenda pack. And I'll invite Georgia Jones from Grant Thornton, the external auditor, to present.
Thank you. So if I take you to agenda page 10, which is page 4 of our report, which should be, so the slide I'm looking at says progress at September 2024 at the top of it. So that just summarises that we issued our audit plan to an earlier meeting this year. We are now currently auditing the financial statements of the council. That is progressing well. And we are making good progress on that, and we anticipate bringing our audit findings report to the November meeting and signing off shortly after that. Our value for money work is also underway. The value for money team are liaising with officers to progress that work, and we will also report that at the November meeting. And those reports will just set out any findings and any recommendations. The following page just sets out those deliverables and that timetable I've just talked about. And then the rest of the report is really just some items for information for members, just various reports that have been issued lately, and also the update around the local audit backlog. So that's where authorities have old year accounts signed off. That doesn't apply to yourselves because your accounts are signed up to date. We are just obviously doing 23-24 now. So happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Georgia. Has anybody on committee got any questions? Oh, Councillor Smith, can always rely on you. Over to you. That's all right. Not a problem.
an internal audit supporting healthy services, and it said that there was you did an audit, and certain councils actually fed into your audit. I just wondered if we had fed into that audit, and if we did we sort it out properly? I'm just proving that I've read all the papers. You see, that's what it is.
Duly noted, Councillor. Actually, it was the Chartered Institute of Internal Auditors. They did kind of an assessment. So obviously that was kind of their report. So I don't know what they did to pull that report together, but there is a link there. So I don't know whether that sets out then who took part in that.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Anybody else? No, anybody off committee? Perfect. Okay, well, thank you very much for all your efforts. I know you've got a bit of a sore throat, so appreciate it. That takes us to, so members are just asked to note that report. That takes us to agenda item 5, which is the internal audit interim report. Members are advised this can be found starting on page 25 of the main agenda pack. So I'll head over to Dawn Heighton, Head of Audit and Risk, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is our usual interim report where we report progress against the first 6-month plan of the year. And the table set out on page 24 of the agenda pack sets out the work that we've completed. Unfortunately, it does look a bit light touch at the minute, but if you can see, look on at the Appendix A, we've got 2 reports which we've actually issued, so they're at draft report stage. The summer holidays got the better of us, if I'm honest, and we struggled to get them over the line in time for this report. So they will be coming in the next time we report an update. So the reports that have been completed and issued as final are the review of UK SPF and the vulnerability management. Obviously, you can see that's a limited assurance report. And Claire Beattie's here if you've got any specific questions. She's our new head of digital services. So if you have any specific questions about that report, she'll be able to answer those. We did say we would provide an update on the limited assurance report and the actions emanating from those reports, which we've done at paragraph 10. And it's overall a very positive picture in that we have still got a small number which are either in progress or are not yet due. But the table does largely show that the actions are being implemented within a reasonable timescale that we agreed with the action owners. Just the other development is we've retained our ISO 9001 recently, so that was something we were really pleased about because as you recall, we have got new members to the team, so it makes sure that we're following the standard processes and that reliance can be placed on our work. So that was the report. I wasn't going to go through each report individually, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Dawn. I think it might just be helpful, Claire, if there's anything you wanted to say about the vulnerability management report before we go to committee questions, would that be helpful?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just update on the report. I think when the report was written, I think 3 of the recommendations had been completed. Now it's actually 6 have been completed, so there's only 1 outstanding now. So they've all been done in a timely manner. They were all, the first 6 were due to be complete by the end of September, and they were completed well before then. The final one, which is the writing of the cybersecurity strategy, is due for completion at the end of December, and that's well underway as we speak. Obviously, I've come into this late on in the programme, in that I only started in June when the vulnerability management audit was actually completed. So I'm now working on these remediations with the team and changing practices going forward.
Thanks, that's really helpful. Okay, open up to committee for any questions or comments on this report, or Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Dawn. I think the table on page 25 is very helpful, which obviously gives us a good, clear sight of the fact that most of the recommendations are now being put in place. There is just 1 or 2. The driving licence checks said that it will be ready for September 24. I just wondered if that is the case. And just on the events management, there's 3 there that are still not yet due. there was quite a intense report, that one, as I recall. I'm just wondering, are they on track, those 3 that are not yet due but are going to get done fairly quickly?
I think you can again gain assurance from this for both of those reviews, because the driving licence checks was one very much focused upon making sure that the checks were carried out on the current drivers, and all those checks and balances are now in place. The 2 actions that are outstanding related to the policy, so it's making sure that the policy supports what we're actually doing. They are due to be followed up at the end of September. So I'll update on that at the next meeting. So in terms of the event management, again, the majority of the actions in terms of proactivity, in terms of checks and balances that needed to go on during events, that's in place. And again, it's very much a policy process that we are still waiting for it to be implemented. So from an event management point of view, many of the actions were implemented for the events for the summer.
Thanks, Dawn. Was there anything else, Councillor Smith?
Each individual one?
No, so we'll take the report as a whole with the annexes.
Right, okay.
So feel free to, if you had more questions. Yeah.
Right, on the UK fund, yes. On page 45, it's talking about the project leaders identified incorrect costing codes information and their project spend, and despite highlighting this during the regular budget monitoring meetings, the inaccuracies remain. I know it says in the narrative that it hasn't a material effect on things, but surely to get things right, the coding should be correct. And has that been corrected now, do you know?
Yes, that was something that was discussed when we met to agree the action plan. And as far as I'm aware, for future ones, we're expecting a date of March 25, but for the ones we were looking at the time, it was corrected in the time of the review.
And last but not least.
Yeah, absolutely. Go
on. Which is the Salford Technical Audit Service. And I think while you use a different scoring system, Dawn, where we have, this one is done from 1 to 10, and we're on 3, which puts me down to the lower end of things, which is of concern. And we have been speaking about it earlier this evening, about the fact that there is obviously a lot of concern about the IT system and the IT department. I think what concerns me mostly is this comment about the background, that we're still in a position that we don't seem to have a full complement of people, and therefore things are still struggling to actually get put in place. I know the policy is being written and it's on its way, which is good, but nevertheless, are we still under capacity? I think this is something that has been ongoing for quite some time now.
Thank you. Yes, I can answer that. We are up to a full complement of staff now of 30.
Of 30?
Of 30, yes, that's a full team.
The final question, if I may. This particular report is dated April. We've had a meeting since then. We had one in July. And yet it's come to this September meeting. I'm wondering why it's been such a delay.
Dawn can come in on that.
So as Claire alluded to, the report was in draft stage in April. That's when the Salford issued it to us. However, we weren't in a position to progress it till Claire started, excuse me, in late June. So obviously, we couldn't just hit her with it straight away. Obviously, she had time to understand what she was facing and what systems and processes were in place to take on the report. So it was only, although it's dated April, it was only actually issued as a final early August, late July time.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that's helpful because we outsource the audit for IT, don't we? So it makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. That's helpful. Yeah, go on, Councillor Smith.
You did mention,
Or just
Ms.
into the
Beattie,
mic, just so everyone
sorry,
can
you
hear.
did mention, Ms. Beattie, that you're now changing some of the systems and trying to obviously move things forward. Could you just explain possibly a little bit more about what actually is that you're doing that is going to improve matters?
Yes, what we've got now is patch management software and vulnerability management software. So we've actually purchased that since I started. So we will have automatic patch management of the system, where before we were actually relying on patches to be released and some to have some capacity within the team to actually apply those patches when we actually had time to do it, where now that will be done automatically. So we should always be patched to the latest levels within the system. So that's one thing we're doing. The vulnerability management software also allows us to actually carry out our own mini audits. So we can do that on a monthly basis now. So we can pick up any vulnerabilities that may be arising, or just to keep a handle on what's going on within the system. So the whole approach to our security of the network is changing as we move on. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chloe, and thanks, Councillor Smith. Was there anyone else on? Councillor Brereton?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's all very interesting to read about the we had these manual patches, and then, like you say, we had to rely on people. Now we're going to an automated. But for a layman like myself, could you just explain what you mean by patch? What does that, just in layman's terms? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. That's if there's an update that comes out to any particular piece of software. So it tends to be a security update that's published. So a little bit like when a mobile phone updates and you're advised you've got so many days to update it to keep it secure. The same way with our software as well. We're always receiving information that we need to actually apply an update to the system, and we're given so many days to actually update that as well. And that's a patch, yes. Sorry.
I think we've all learnt something tonight, so that's helpful. Thanks, Councillor Brereton. Councillor Turner, did you want to come in?
Yes, I did. Sorry. Obviously, Councillor Smith was on a run of questions and has took us a little further than my question. So my question's to Dawn, please. Dawn, I'm not sure if you know this because it's probably going into quite a lot of detail, but on page 45, when you talked about the testing identified instances where project leads had identified incorrect cost coding information. On page 45, yeah. It's on the management action plan, yeah. So my question was, the cost codes, how are they approved internally? Because I just wondered if that was a reason why people were booking to the incorrect number, that the approval process internally of it releasing cost codes had failed.
I think Louise is going to take that one.
So basically, the finance system is set up that there are a whole suite of cost centres across the council. So one for finance, one for HR, communities, etc. And then within each cost centre, there is an expenditure type. So be that salaries, rent, rates, repairs, etc. And what's happened is when individuals within the operational teams have incurred expenditure, at the point they are raising the order, coding the invoice, they have selected the wrong code. Because this is funded by UK SPF, we needed to be able to extract that expenditure to be able to assign it against the UK SPF funding, and that's what hadn't happened, and therefore it had been incorrectly coded. So that should have been notified, and then that could be adjusted by the finance team. So that's the thing; it hadn't been adjusted. We hadn't been notified, so that's been that's corrected.
Okay, so just for clarification, who or how are cost codes to book costs to? How are they issued internally?
They're not issued. That is the actual structure of the finance system. So if we were to raise an order, at the point you raise the order, it will ask you for which cost centre do you want to book it again. So is it a cost to the finance team? Is it a cost to the legal team? And then it will ask you for an expense type. And so at that point, you put in the type of expenditure it is. That gets selected when the order is raised. So you don't create that. That's already hard coded into the system. That's part of the finance system architecture.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Louise. Was there any other questions on committee? Okay, can't see any off committee. Councillor Smith, indeed. Come on down.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's not a question. It's on page 25 and it's para 13, which states that the internal audit service has retained its ISO 9001 accreditation, and I think that's obviously a good thing for the council, and I think I would like to congratulate them on doing that and the continual updating on that. I'm sure the committee would as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Smith. Well, I think we'll all join you in that one. Indeed. Perfect. Okay. So, yeah, thanks for the report. It's always nice to see a substantial. So adequate's are nice. Limited's are never great to see, but I think everyone will be assured of the work you and the team are putting in, Claire. So thanks for coming down to the committee and giving us an update on that. And it's even more actions have been ticked off. So that's really good. And I'm sure everyone's bated breath for the cyber security policy. So committee are just asked to note this position with regards to the internal audit plan and management actions. That takes us to item agenda 6, which is for approval. This is the internal audit plan between October 24 and March 25. You can find the start of this report on page 65. So I'll pass back over to Dawn for that.
Again, thank you, Chair. So again, this is our usual report setting out our programme of work for the next 6 months from October 24 to March 25. It's again, we've gone through our usual process of consulting and doing our own risk assessment to bring together the plan. We do have a slight change in our audit resource for the next 6 months. One of our more experienced auditors is actually leaving the team, but it's actually created a good opportunity, because if you remember, we recruited a trainee nearly 2 years ago now. They've stayed with us. We've gone through all the professional training. They're actually due to take their final exam this month, early next month, and we're hoping that's positive and we'll be able to promote them into that role. So they've settled really well. So we're hoping to repeat that process again, so that we'll have trainees that we can bring through the system again. It's got a slight impact, and I'm just going to apologise, because I've just realised that my figure for on top of page 57, I put CBC, and that should say SRBC. So I do apologise for that. And actually, it's the wrong report that's been submitted. It's got Chorley Council's header on, so I'm going to apologise completely for this. This is just a mistake on my part.
I can.
Oh,
what page are you looking at?
I'm unsure. I'm so sorry. Can I bring your paperwork? My reports are very similar. Sorry. So it has got a small impact, like you say, of 17 days that we're going to reduce the plan from when we calculated our initial resource at the start of the year. So that equates to roughly one review. So it's not a significant impact on the plan. The important thing to note in all this is that we will still have done enough work and have sufficient coverage of the whole authority to be able to provide that opinion at the end of the year. So yeah, we'll still be able to do that. I've attached the plan, but again, I'm happy to take any questions. And again, apologise, I must be on the completely wrong ModGov, so I'll get on the right one now.
That's all right. Thanks, Dawn. I guess I'll kick off just in terms of questions, because I did see the 17 days and I thought, well, it's not too much. So if it equates to one review, does that mean we've taken off a review, or have we just reduced a few days by other reviews? Or you see what I mean? Has something slipped off and put it into next year?
This is one of the advantages of not having an annual plan, so that we can adapt. So we've taken a various options. We have reduced some days of some audits. So we haven't, I don't think, because we've still got 15, it's very similar numbers to what we delivered last year. So we've just adapted our approach.
Perfect. Agile as ever. But, okay, other comments or questions from committee? Can't see any. Any off committee? Perfect. Okay. So I'll need someone to propose that we approve this. If perfect, thanks, Councillor Smith. And then is someone able to second it? Oh, thanks, Councillor Breverton. And then if we could just raise our hands to say that we approve the plan. Great. So that's confirmed. And that takes us to agenda item 7, which is Dawn's last report, which is on health and safety annual report. So I'll pass back over to Dawn, who's hopefully on the right pages now. I'm sure you are.
I get looking at the numbers thinking my pages are not adding up, and now I know why. Yes, this was a report that went to the senior management team a couple of weeks ago, and it's an annual report which is best practice on what health and safety should do, is present their work to the management team on the work that they've completed over the course of the year. And it's to give both the management team and yourselves as governance committee assurance. So it's another form of assurance, and it forms part of our overall governance framework. So we thought going forward, it would be helpful if you could see the annual report as well, so you can see the work that has been completed by the team. There's information about the staffing, the key activities they've undertaken, the training both of the team and that they are delivering. You can see accidents and statistics and KPIs that we're reporting on. And again, it sets out the objectives for the team for the forthcoming year. So I don't intend to go through the report in detail, but I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
No, thanks, Dawn. I'll open up to Councillor Breverton. Perfect question.
Thank you, Dawn. The report, Appendix B on page 85, do those figures include the leisure company? Are they included in these figures? Thank you.
No, the leisure companies have their own health and safety arrangements. They're not provided by us.
So just while we're on the same page, so in terms of number of near misses, ours is quite high compared to Chorley's. Do we have any indication of whether it's more that we're better at recording near misses, or is there areas where there's particular near misses happening?
We've got a different workforce profile in that we've got waste services.
Very good. Anybody else on committee? Questions? Councillor Smith?
Yes, you just said that the leisure is actually a separate. Are the ones for the waste collection in these figures? They are. Right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No, I thought it was very thorough. Even I wouldn't say dry at times. You're generally not dry audit, but health and safety was a little bit dry, but it was really thorough, and we take it really seriously. So, any questions or comments off committee? No. Perfect. So this is just for noting, so committee can note that. That takes us, thanks Dawn, that takes us to agenda item 8, which is the review of the financial regulations. And I know Louise has had really much fun, hours of fun doing this. It starts on page 117 of the agenda supplement. Well, yeah, it'll just be on the agenda supplement, I think, from the start. So I'll pass over to Louise, who's Director of Finance for now.
Thank you very much. So the covering report outlines the kind of key points of the review, in that the financial regs were last reviewed in April 2021, and that was just before I'd started. And I think in terms of trying to present them, we'd started the review by trying to mark on tracked changes, but that proved quite problematic because in reviewing them, what I've taken into consideration is kind of best practice elsewhere in other councils, and also the issues and queries that have been raised over the period, really, from colleagues. And that's about kind of more clarification about what some of the points are that are in the financial regulations. And the whole purpose of them is to ensure that everybody understands them, can interpret them and apply them. So that was the key objective, really, to make sure that they were in such a form that they are user-friendly and easy to understand. And that's the way they've been presented. So if you are looking for if you have a specific query, unsure what to do when it relates to finance, you can go into the regulations, and hopefully it's very self-evident which one you should be looking at, and they follow on. So because of that, it has meant that track changes proved to be not possible. And within the report from point 12, it outlines what the key changes have been. So I think what I would say is none of the financial limits have changed. So the regulations with regard to who can authorise financial budgetary changes are exactly as they are at this moment in time. So there's been no changes in that regard. It's just the detail to make sure that all officers know if there is a decision, whether it be capital, whether it be revenue, whether it be an in-year change, environment from one budget to another, this is the route that you need to follow. This is where a report needs to go. So it's kind of exemplified within that. And we've also added in new regulations, things that were missing. So particularly around VAT, which may be a dry topic, but has huge financial implications for the council if we get it wrong. So there is details of that going forward. Quite a lot around budgetary control. That's the main area and the main point where people would look to the financial regulations. And I've outlined in there a little bit around write-offs as well. Again, working with Alison Wilding on the income team revs and bends, we've simplified it and put in place the clarity around who can write off what debts that prove to be irrecoverable. So there's more clarity and control on that. I know it is a long read, but hopefully you've been able to navigate it, and it's a bit easier to understand than it has been in the past. The request is for Governance Committee to review the proposed layout and the proposed changes, and then that will need to continue to council in November, because the financial regs form part of the constitution, and council will be asked to approve it.
Perfect, thanks Louise. Does anybody on committee have any questions or points, or Councillor Gabbert?
Thank you, Chair. Just paragraph 21, which is the suggested change in the financial regulation, 10, I think, so it's irrecoverable debt. Just the question is, the current amounts quoted in the regs are 25,000. I just wondered why we've increased them to up to and then over 50,000. Obviously, over the 50,000 I know of, but why has that not stayed at 25? Are we anticipating that we're going to have to write off any debts that are above 25 but under 50?
So we're not anticipating anything at this moment in time. So at the moment, the current regulations say that everything would have to come to me up to the figure of 25,000, and anything above 25,000 would be just for myself and the portfolio holder for finance. Here is introducing, if it's over 50,000, then it would be reported to executive. At the point that we'd look to write off a debt, it's not looking at individual invoices, it's looking at the debtor as a whole at that particular point in time, and those debts that are irrecoverable. So there's a lot more transparency within this framework than there has been in the past. And I would say that from reviewing this, and obviously there was a debtors report that internal audit did, that because of confusion, I would say. They haven't been coming through regularly, and so there have been debts that were irrecoverable that have just stayed on the debtors ledger when actually they should have been moved on. So this provides us with a more solid framework. So officers know it's not that they would be coming through to me and I would sign them off. I've hardly had any, which is indicative that we don't write off debts very, very often. And that might be because they are on the debtors ledger and need to be moved off, or that there is good debt recovery.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Thanks, Councillor Gabbert. Were there any other queries on committee or questions, Councillor Smith?
It's more of a comment, really, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Louise for this report. It wasn't the easiest report to read, I have to say, but I did manage to get to the end of it. And we have these financial regulations have needed to be updated for quite some time, and I know it has taken a lot of work to do it, so I'm happy to move them on and propose that we actually send it to council. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's absolutely. You can see how it's much more user friendly for the officers as well. So I'll just, before we've got a proposal, I'll just check there's no comments off committee. Perfect. I won't want Councillor Smith to be unhappy. The other Councillor Smith. Is someone willing to second? Thanks, Councillor Turner. Okay, so just so we're clear on what we're voting for, we are recommending that the proposed changes to the financial regulations are sent forward for adoption at full council. So if you could raise your hand if you're in agreement. Perfect. Thank you very much. That takes us to our very patient people who have come for agenda item 9. So this is a strategic risk review. I'm going to invite Holly Walmsley, Head of People, Policy and Partnerships, which I feel like you've been here before, for a different thing, but I'll invite you to lead on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our strategic risk review. So to be distinguished from service level risks or project related risks, these are the broader strategic risks that deal with the context in which the council operates. So we undertake this on an annual basis or as and when things change. So this is a large scale review of that full matrix of strategic risk. So included in Appendix 1 are all of the risks, their inherent scores, their residual scores, and then their target scores, okay? And there's a number of actions that we have taken, we do take, to limit that risk from the inherent risk to the residual risk, and then some more actions that we're going to take to get us to our target risks. Okay, there are a number of the risks that are highlighted in this report. Those are the ones that have very high inherent risks. So that's RO3, RO6 and RO7 in the full appendix. As you'll see through that, a lot of the activity that we already do takes us down to the residual risks, which are lower than that, and then our target risks even further. There is one area where we have seen a risk increase, and that is around cybersecurity. So I'm sure that everybody will be aware that this is just to do with the increased risk that the public sector has of cyber attack, and we have increased our risk accordingly, and obviously also increase the number of actions that we intend to take to bring that down to the target level. So I'm not going to go through the full appendix, but if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
No, thanks very much, Holly. I think it was it's always a reassuring report to, how we're tackling with risk and making sure we're doing it as an organisation. So is there anyone on committee that had any specific questions about the report or comments on the report? No, I can't see any. I guess it's one on my mind, which is maybe it's not probably as relevant to the paper potentially, but is, I guess, the leisure company's already been brought up tonight by somebody, and just kind of around the risk and the governance arrangements of the leisure company. I think I feel like as governance committee, we're probably not as cited on what they are. Obviously, we've not really got a massive role in that, but it'd just be maybe interesting to reflect on that in future. But Dawn, if you wanted to come in, that would be helpful because you might know more.
The board of directors consider the governance arrangements and the risk registers for the leisure companies.
it might be one to pick up in the slower time of just having a bit more of an understanding, and also what the processes are. But no, I think it was a really good report. Councillor Smith has a question or comment.
Yes, it's just out of interest. On page 98, we've introduced a new risk, which is the potential impact of change to senior officers and elected members on service delivery and continuity. Just wondered why we homed in on that one and why we've suddenly decided it's a risk.
I think rather than us sort of suddenly decide it's a risk, it's more us reflecting the awareness of that risk within this, because it is obviously something that we have experienced and we are likely to experience in the future. There will be a level of turnover when it comes to political leadership and also officer leadership, and we need to make sure that we are prepared for that, we anticipate it, and we put things in place to limit the impact of that as and when that happens.
I've actually seen this risk before, but it's usually just before an election or something, when there possibly is going to be a changes in an environment. But I just wondered why halfway through we decided to put it in, but you've obviously reflected on it. But I think the other thing is the one that has gone up, which we've discussed this evening, which is obviously the ICT facility. And I'm sure that you will be eager to get this risk back down again. And hopefully that next time we see this, that will have occurred, and that we will be going forward in a much happier place with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's good in one sense in the paper that it's on the SMT's radar and you're tackling it head on, and we're all waiting with bated breath to see some more progress, more solid progress. So, yeah, okay. No comments or questions from anyone else on committee. Of course you can, Councillor. So I was only going to ask the other councillors.
All right. I think your comment about the leisure services, I think is very valid, because it does stand away from the council itself. And the directors, last time I heard, there was only about 2 or 3 of that are members of this council. And we see very little insight into what is going on there. And in recent times, I know the Cabinet has actually put in another £500,000. And, it's been put into the leisure services, but we don't know how that has affected it, whether it's helped it, it's gone worse. And maybe it isn't for us to poke our noses in, but you feel sometimes that we should have at least some sight of it.
No, I think reflecting on what you're saying as well. I think it was the increased cost of energy or something. That's why we put the money was put in. But you're right. I think we should at least explore the question. If there's a curiosity as a committee about that space, we at least get an answer about it. And I'll talk to Chris and Taz and see what our role is, or if we don't have a specific role, why not? And who is it carried out by? That's got some level of independence and scrutiny. So I think we should, definitely follow up on that one.
I think you're right there.
Go for it.
The level of independence.
Oh, yeah.
The level of independent scrutiny, if the board are actually scrutinising themselves, it's like them marking their own homework. That's how it appears to me.
Yeah, and it was a riveting conversation, which Holly probably wasn't thinking it was going to go down. But yeah, and it's that element of governance arrangements where we do make sure that it's been done by officers, and then scrutiny have got their role. But yeah, absolutely. Okay. Councillor Turner, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. I think it's a good point, actually, that we do have scrutiny over the leisure centres, because at the end of the day, they are the end user of those leisure centres are our residents. And there has been a couple of issues reported to us that are concerning with regards to Penwitham Leisure Centre. So, and I actually didn't know who to escalate that to. So I don't know who the board of directors are. Do you?
Well, I think Taz can come in, but obviously we've got the cabinet member for leisure, Councillor Hunter. But Louise, do you want to come in? I think Chris and Louise might be on it, are they?
Yeah. So, in the way that the leisure companies were set up, and they were established back in, I think it was September 2021. So there is a board of directors, which comprises of Jennifer Mullen, and she is the managing director of the leisure company, Chris Moister, and myself. So we meet on usually every other month, and we would consider all of we get reports from the various departments, be that on any staffing matters, on financial arrangements, a whole host of other things. We have the accounts produced, and those are submitted. They're at Companies House and filed on their Companies House website, and we have to submit the corporation tax calculations. As a board of directors, we then report to the shareholders of the company, and the shareholders of the company, the shareholder is South Ribble Borough Council, and the shareholders are represented, and it is the cabinet that take that role as the shareholders, and there is a shareholder meeting. So that gets reported in there.
So, yeah, go for it.
Please, for clarification. Sorry, Louise. Thanks for that response. Anyway, it made things very clear. When you say you get reports presented to you of, I guess, different areas of the leisure centres, who is it that's generating that report? Is it those reports? Is it the leisure centre staff? Was it they have a set, or is it the team here at?
So, dependent on the nature of the report. So the leisure centre team, they will produce the business plan for consideration by the board of directors. Jennifer, as managing director, she holds regular monthly meetings with the leisure centre managers, and to check against performance against the business plan. That we get quarterly updates on that brought to the board. The finances, just as the council gets a quarterly revenue monitoring report, as a board of directors, we get a quarterly revenue monitoring report for the finances of the leisure service. The leisure company has service level agreements in place with teams across the council. So there is one in place with HR, with finance, with property services, etc. So there is a payment and an invoice raised from the council to the leisure company for that particular service, and for that service we expect a level of return. So it's a mix. Some of it is leisure centre staff and some of it's bought in services. So for example, the accounts are produced. The finance team don't produce the statutory accounts. We have an accountant that produces those and does the corporation tax calculation, but the general monitoring of the finances over the year is done by the finance team.
Oh, thanks very much, Louise. Any questions from off committee? I don't think there's any final ones on committee. Okay, perfect. So committee are just asked to note the strategic risks, controls in place and actions planned to further mitigate risk as set out in the report. And with that, I thank Holly and the team, and that brings us to the end of the meeting. So thank you everybody for tonight, and we'll see you next time.
you.